Hello, I'm Alex Pat, and welcome back to Wrigleyville Times. And of course, we wish everyone a happy All-Star break as the season has come to its halfway point, and it's hard to believe it's already at that halfway point. I said this before in another video, it feels like the season just started yesterday, but here we are at the All-Star break, halfway through, and a pretty good look at what the Cubs are made of so far. This video, we're going to be taking a look at Cubs stats as a team as a whole. We're not going to look into individual players yet. This is just as a team compared to everyone else and looking ahead for the second half. So, without further ado, let's get to it. The record for the Cubs in the first half, 47-40, 7 games above 500. I myself and many other people could say we did not expect to be at that level. And the funny thing is, there were a lot of games the Cubs, guess you could say, could have won, but didn't. So technically, they could be better, but overall, to be 7 games above 500 at the All-Star break with this young team, that's pretty exciting. Let's take a look at the standings currently. The Cubs are right now 3rd in the NL Central. They are behind Pittsburgh and St. Louis. St. Louis in first place, we're 8 games behind them, and we're 2.5 behind the second place Pirates, who we are 5.5 behind for the first wild card spot. We hold the second wild card spot. We are 1 game ahead of the Mets and just a few games ahead of the San Francisco Giants. So throughout pretty much the whole season, they've held the second wild card spot consistently throughout. It's been really tough to catch Pittsburgh as they've been on fire lately. They just took a few games against the Cardinals in walk-off fashion. So it almost helps and doesn't help the Cubs that they beat the Cardinals. I almost rather that the Pittsburgh Pirates keep losing, that way we could maybe possibly get the #1 wildcard spot, but maintaining a wildcard spot is still pretty impressive anyway, as I truly don't feel that this team is ready to compete for the division, especially against the St. Louis Cardinals. So in this, we'll take a look at the 3 aspects of team statistics. We'll look at hitting, pitching, and defense. We'll start with the offense because that's been the most talked about category recently because of the struggles that the Cubs had on offense. Now, we can look at it as a whole and say it's seen a lot of ups and downs, maybe some more downs than ups, but here are the numbers overall. The Cubs have scored 335 runs. That is 23rd in Major League Baseball. So they're pretty down in number of runs scored, but we take a look at their on-base percentage, they're at .315, and that's very middle of the road at 16th in the MLB. One of the biggest things that the Cubs fight is the strikeouts. They have 799 punch-outs so far. That's 2nd in the MLB, and that's 1st in the National League. They're not much of a power team per se. Their on-base plus slugging is .690. That's 22nd in the MLB, and their home run totals, 77, is 17th in the MLB. So they're not the worst slugging team, but they're certainly not the best. At best, they're slightly below average. Now here's a very interesting group of stats. Despite the strikeouts and the lack of run scoring, their plate discipline has shown quite a bit of improvement this year, and in fact has been pretty impressive in several remarks. Well, first of all, they've drawn 293 walks. That is 4th in MLB and 2nd in the National League. And one of the most interesting stats about that, they have seen 13,187 pitches. That's 4th in Major League Baseball, and that is 1st in the NL in seeing all pitches. As for their batting average of balls in play, they're at evenly 300. So the offense has done a lot of positive things. They've made pitchers work, they've made them throw a lot of pitches, they've seen a lot of full counts, they've taken a lot of walks, they are working the count well. The biggest issue is driving in the runs, because you could see the counter of the decent on base, the great work of the counts, the walks, but the lack of runs scored. So that's something they definitely need to work on in the second half. So there is promise for this offense, they just need to learn to execute when guys are on base. So now we're going to go to what I thought was the best part of the first half, was the pitching. The pitching was better than I thought it would be, and even though it had some down moments like every team will, overall, I've been very, very impressed with the pitching. To look at the basic numbers of the pitching that are important, we take a look at their FIP at .328, that's the 5th lowest in Major League Baseball. Their BABIP against is .286, 22nd in baseball. They've struck out 754 batters, 3rd in MLB and 2nd in the NL. They've walked 221 batters. That's the 4th lowest in Major League Baseball. They've converted 21 saves out of 33 save opportunities. So they've had their moments where they've blown their saves. It's certainly not an amazing save percentage by any means, but we have seen worse. Having that low team FIP with a lot of these younger pitchers and the mixing in of the veterans as well really shows promise for the future. There's no doubt in my mind that I could call Arrieta the ace of the staff. Jason Hamill's been really good, and lately John Lester has been a lot better. Unfortunately, he does not get the run support. And Kyle Hendricks, how he turned it around. He was starting off the year pretty shaky, but his last few games, he hasn't allowed runs, and he's looked a lot like that Greg Maddux type, and that's been really impressive. And even in our 5th spot, we acquired Clayton Richard, which was a solid pickup, low risk, high reward, and I feel that he could do good things in the second half. He certainly won't blow anyone away, but he certainly will show some decency. And our bullpen as well has been overall very solid. Jason Mott has really turned things around. Neil Ramirez is back. Grimm has shown some promise. Pedro Strop has been very up and down. You could ask Bob Costas. But overall, the bullpen has really become solid in kind of the end of the first half, where in the beginning of the year it was really shaky, up and down, had some really bad moments, especially in St. Louis. But the way they've solidified themselves, I think, is a great sign, and we'll see what Theo does at the deadline when it comes to pitching. The whole talk of the first half was acquiring another pitcher, a 5th starter, maybe another bullpen arm. We also acquired Rafael Soriano, who's yet to pitch this year, so we could see him in the second half as he's been pitching in AAA. Now we'll take a look at a few defensive numbers, and the Cubs being a young team, it's kind of expected that their fielding is not the greatest. And this year, they're 25th in baseball with a fielding percentage of .982. So, yes, they've had their struggles defensively. I don't see any gold gloves on this infield or outfield. I think Anthony Rizzo might be the closest infielder to be a gold glover, but even so, I really don't see much of it. We've seen Chris Bryant having some struggles throwing over to first base. One really impressive aspect, though, of our defense is how well Addison Russell has fielded his position. He's made some great plays going back, going forward, going to his left, going to his right. Overall, the young kid has really shown good defense. And I think, obviously with time, Chris Bryant's looking a lot better. Anthony Rizzo has looked so solid so far. So, yes, the defense isn't great, but it definitely will improve over time. And it's shown flashes that it definitely will improve over time. So those are the basic numbers. We all know that in the first half, especially with the young team, you're going to see good and you're going to see bad. It's going to be a whole hodgepodge of different things, like so.
You're out! You're out!
But either way, you got to be so proud of this young Cub team for being 7 games above 500 at the All-Star break. I didn't see that. A lot of people didn't see that. I thought we were going to be blessed if we were like exactly at 500, maybe 1 or 2 games above, or maybe 1 or 2 games below. That would have shown improvement over the past basically since 2008 years, if you know what I mean. So we got a lot to look forward to the second half, and I think some great things are going to come. I'm Alex Paff for Wrigleyville Times.